In this video, I'm going to talk about how I utilize these chickens to make some incredible compost and the process of hot composting from start to finish. Over the past number of years, this chicken yard has been an evolving space where nitrogen and carbon are brought in on a regular basis, and it's yielded me a plentiful supply of fertility for my use here on the property, thanks to the help of these chickens. My approach within this compost yard has been one to try to mirror nature as much as possible and to not rush the process. I typically don't bring compost out of here any sooner than about 4 months, but what you see in here right now is compost that's about 11 months old. I've probably got 2 yards still here remaining from what was started last fall, and this will be going out onto some established perennials that I have in my orchard and elsewhere on the property. But from the standpoint of the flow of the material, it comes in that gate there, and it'll either be brought into a ring at that location, or I'll start, as I'm going to today, adding some material into a compost ring in this corridor. And then as it develops, it gets moved toward the down side of the chute, and then it'll eventually make its way on out this gate right here. One of the challenges in here in the summertime is to make sure that this material is staying hydrated and doesn't dry out. So I typically run the water in here at least 3 days out of the week, if not more, depending on how hot it's been. Last fall I brought in about 8 to 10 yards of wood chips throughout the entirety of this yard. And that's been the basis for which all of these compost piles originated from. As I look around this yard, there's probably at least 6 to 12 inches throughout the entirety. And what that really helps with is odor absorption, because it's going to help to absorb the incredible amount of chicken manure that these guys drop in here daily. I've run my fork around this ring to consolidate all of this material. And again, this isn't anything that needs to come out of here at any time soon. There's a lot of rough material in here, obviously a lot of biochar and a lot of wood chips. This would be great to put out on anything here on the property. However, if I did want to refine it more, I could run it through a screen and get some of this heavier material out. But this entire area is like this. As I run my fork out further, you can see there's just a lot of material out here that's naturally aging. And I'll bring in fresh carbon, put over the top of this, and then this may not come out of here until sometime next year at some point. Within this entire yard, I'm standing on, again, 6 inches to a foot of wood chips. And if I were to dig down into this, stick my fork in that far, turn this over, see, now they're interested. But all of this wood chip will remain in here, and it'll just be a bed of carbon and essentially a battery. There's a lot of leaves in there from last fall, you can see. They're able to browse on all the vegetation that's lining the fence. Here's some comfrey that they've taken an interest in. And then all of the vines from grapes and other things that are growing, they'll come through and prune. So any of these grapes that happen to fall or are low hanging, they'll take care of. But if I give them a little snack, they come a running. They are a favorite of theirs. I use black oil sunflower seed to introduce into the piles that I want the chickens to work. By folding this in, it just encourages them and incentivizes them. And they'll continue to break these down, aerate them, make them very tilthy. Today I'm going to assemble a hot compost or thermophilic compost. And all that thermophilic refers to, it's a temperature range between 130 degrees Fahrenheit and 160 degrees. The benefit of keeping your compost within that range for as long as you possibly can is it's going to promote the death of things like weed seeds, but it's not going to be so hot that it harms good beneficial bacteria and good microorganisms, but it's also going to kill harmful pathogens. There's two primary substrates that will be used. One is carbon, the other is nitrogen. A good recommendation to start with is about 60% carbon and 40% nitrogen, with 10% of that 40% being of high nitrogen. So that's going to be things like your animal manures are going to only be that 10% of your 40. The other thing that's absolutely essential for the success of this is to make your pile large enough so that you have enough insulative effect, so that there's going to be enough heat contained and generated within that pile. So the outer covering is going to actually act as that insulation, or you may want to add some form of tarping that can go over that to assist in that insulative effect. And then lastly, but probably one of the most important things, is to provide moisture. And that's going to be done by just adding water to this and making sure that it's wet enough, not too wet where it's going to starve it of oxygen, but be kind of wet like a damp sponge. That would be the ideal moisture content inside of your pile. You assemble all those things, and then within a couple of days, you're going to start to see that temperature start to increase. I've got some sheep manure right here. I've got some lawn clippings, which is going to be the basis from which I start. And yeah, let's get her going. This is just bedding that is being pulled out from where I had some sheep. This is pretty heavily laden with a lot of manure, a lot of their urine, on top of all of this bedding, which is just more carbon. This will be mixed with, I have a bunch of lawn clippings mixed with leaves. You're going to want to mix the carbon and the nitrogen along with the water as thoroughly as you possibly can as you're building your pile up. They seem to like it pretty well. I'm going to go get some more material, but in the meantime I'm going to set up my water. I'll also be adding at this point about a wheelbarrow load or so of biochar. And if you're interested in learning more about biochar, how to make it, and its uses, I've got an entire playlist dedicated to biochar and soil building. And the rings that I run in this yard are, generally speaking, anywhere from about a little over a yard to just under 2 yards in size. And for this space that I have in here, I wouldn't really want to have anything much bigger, and certainly I wouldn't want to go much smaller than what I have right before me. I've put one wheelbarrow load of just lawn clippings over the top of the pile, which is going to serve two purposes. It's going to act to add to that insulative effect for the material on the inside that's heating up. And then when this pile is turned, all of this material on the outside will be placed on the inside of the new pile, thereby reigniting or providing fuel or nitrogen to continue the burn. I'm going to stick a temperature probe in this pile. I'll cover it up with a tarp just to keep the chickens from completely blowing it apart during the process of it building heat. And then we'll check back in a couple days and I'll show you what we got. I've also added some biochar to some of these piles that are out on the periphery, and I'll be including some coffee grounds as well. Around the perimeter of the chicken yard, I've got different things growing, some of which I've planted and others just decided to show up. Things like pumpkin and watermelon and sunflower intertwined in with the grapes that I've planted. This is a chicken tunnel that runs in between my raised beds and my orchard. And about 2 days later, let's take a look and see what we've got. See what the temperatures are looking like. Now we are sitting just above 140, probably about 144 or so. This pile will continue to heat up over the course of the next number of days, and I'll monitor the temperature. And as this temperature begins to fall from its peak, I'll go ahead and make the decision at that point to either turn it or not. If I decide to turn it, essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking the outer covering, which is still a really great fuel source, and I'll be putting that on the inside of the pile, thereby reigniting it with the hope that I'm going to continually get it back up into that thermophilic range. Another really important aspect of turning your pile is the reintroduction of oxygen to all of the material on the inside. This is going to allow your pile to remain aerobically conditioned, which is the basis for developing a good, healthy, hot compost. Thanks for coming along on this chicken yard tour in the summer of 2024. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.